42 chairs. 42 names. And not a single one was mine, even though my brother personally told me to come. I stood in that doorway for 11 seconds. I counted them. Not because I was frozen, but because I needed to be absolutely sure of what I was seeing before I decided what I was going to do about it. And what I was going to do changed everything. 3 weeks before that night, my brother Ethan called me. Not a text. Not an email. A call. Ethan calls when he wants something to feel personal. When he needs you to believe in the warmth of his voice rather than the coldness of his intentions. "Danny," he said, "you have to come." Dad would have wanted the whole family there. 25 years. The company started from nothing. It's a celebration. It matters. I felt it. That pull. That old hope that maybe this time, with enough shared grief over losing our father, Ethan and I could just be brothers again. So I said yes. I pressed my charcoal suit. I put on my father's cufflinks, the ones with the small oak tree engraved on them, because he always said the family was rooted like an oak. I drove 4 hours on a Friday evening telling myself that showing up mattered, that family mattered. I walked through the doors of the Whitmore at exactly 7 o'clock, and I counted 42 chairs, and none of them had my name. The hostess checked her clipboard with an expression that was both apologetic and completely rehearsed. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't see Daniel Aldridge. Can you check again?" My brother Ethan arranged everything. The pause lasted exactly long enough to confirm she had been briefed. That someone had told her, "He will come. He will not be on the list. Be polite but firm." That's when I heard him. "Danny, you made it." Ethan walked toward me in a navy suit, champagne flute in hand, cousin Marcus laughing beside him. He wore the face he saved for people he needed to manage. Open, warm, slightly concerned. He looked at the clipboard and performed confusion so well I almost believed it myself, and I've been watching him perform for 30 years. That is so strange. I submitted the full list weeks ago. This must be some kind of administrative error. Administrative error. The words landed like a closed door. Through the open double doors behind him, I could see the room filling. Our Aunt Patricia. Our cousin Renata. 3 of my father's oldest business partners. My mother's best friend Diane, who had known me since before I could walk. Every single one of them could see me standing at the entrance. Not one of them stood up. Ethan put a hand on my shoulder. "Let me see what we can do." What they did was set up a small round table near the service corridor. Not at the back of the room. Beside the door the catering staff used to wheel in the food carts. The linen was cream instead of ivory. Close enough that Ethan could later say nothing was wrong. Different enough that everyone near me knew it was added last minute. The chair had a scuff on the left leg. I sat down. I want you to understand what it cost to sit down calmly and pick up the menu card like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The entire room was watching. Ethan was watching. The only move that didn't give him what he wanted was to perform nothing. So I performed nothing. I ordered the salmon. I unfolded my napkin. When the catering staff wheeled past me, I nodded at them. I respected them more in that moment than most people seated at ivory-linened tables around me. Then Ethan gave the opening toast from the head table. Our head table. The one with our father's photograph in a silver frame at the center. The seat where I should have been sitting as co-owner of Aldridge Holdings. 25 years ago, Ethan said, raising his glass, my father started this company with a handshake and a dream. Tonight, we honor what he built and what I've spent the last 2 years continuing to grow. What he had built. Not we. Not us. Just him. I watched 2 board members exchange a glance too quick and too knowing to be casual. I watched Gerald Marsh, our family lawyer, cut his salmon and avoid my eyes completely. That was the moment I understood the full shape of what was happening. The missing place card was not a mistake. It was a demonstration. Ethan telling every person in that room, Daniel can be excluded. Daniel will absorb it quietly. And no one here will stop me. It was a test of the room's loyalty. And the room had passed. I need to tell you who we are. Because none of this makes sense without the 20 years before it. Ethan is 3 years older, the kind of handsome that gets you forgiven. Our father introduced him at 14 as my son who's going to run the company someday. I was not that son. I was the one who read the contracts. At 19, I caught one of Dad's partners skimming the operating account, $17,000 over 3 years. I built the model that kept us solvent through the 2009 recession while Ethan spent 3 weeks in Miami. I found a Singapore investor who tripled our revenue. I loved that work, but I had told myself a story, that the work speaks for itself, that it would be enough. What I understand now is that I had been confusing being valued with being seen, and those two things are not the same. Ethan had always known they weren't the same. He kept me useful and kept me small, and now my father was gone. The management phase was over. He just needed the room to watch it happen. I ate my salmon. I checked my watch. At the 20-minute mark, Ethan leaned close to Gerald and said something quiet. Gerald nodded, the nod of a man confirming something already decided. At 25 minutes, Ethan's wife Maya caught my eye and gave me a small, careful smile. The kind that means, I chose my side a long time ago. At 28 minutes, Marcus crouched beside my chair.
Danny.
Ethan's about to announce a restructuring. Outside management firm. Ownership adjustments. Gerald says it's all legal. A pause. I just thought you should be prepared. He patted my arm and walked back to the head table. I looked at my watch. 30 minutes. I took out my phone. Typed 3 words.
Sent them. Coming now.
I set the phone face down on the cream tablecloth. Waited 90 seconds. Then I stood up. The doors at the back of the banquet hall opened. 2 people walked in. The first was Sophia Chen, my attorney, retained 3 weeks ago when Ethan's invitation felt warm in a way my body recognized as a warning before my mind caught up. The second was Robert Fisk, a notary public and the man who had witnessed my father's final updated will, signed 8 months before his death, filed properly, legally unambiguous. Behind them, a document courier carried 11 copies of a 37-page document. I walked from my table near the service corridor to the head table. I did not hurry. I placed my hand flat on the ivory tablecloth in front of Ethan's champagne glass and looked at him the way you look at someone when you are completely finished being afraid of them. Before you make your announcement, I said, I'd like to make mine. The room went quiet the way rooms go quiet when something true is about to be said. Ethan's smile lasted 2 seconds before something behind it shifted. Danny. Gerald. I turned to our lawyer. You've seen my father's will. The updated one, March 14th, 2 years before his death. Gerald's face went very still. I'm familiar with the document. Then you know that any restructuring of Aldrich Holdings requires written consent from both majority shareholders. Because my father's will designates Ethan and me as equal co-owners. Not majority and minority.
Equal.
Which means Ethan cannot restructure, cannot alter ownership, cannot authorize any capital decision over $250,000 without my signature. Any action taken without my consent isn't a restructuring, it's fraud. I nodded at Sophia. She placed the courier bag on the table. I've also conducted a full financial audit, my legal right as co-owner. Over the past 18 months, $730,000 moved through accounts not reflected in any board minutes I was included in. Gerald, your name is on the CC line of 3 of those transfers. Gerald Marsh looked like a man standing in a building that had just changed addresses. Ethan stood up. His chair scraped back too loud. This is completely. I'm not finished. He sat back down. Feel that moment. Ethan, who had choreographed this entire evening, the missing place card, the cream linen, the announcement designed to remove me from everything my father built, sat back down because I asked him to. Because 42 people had just recalculated. I am not here to destroy this company. I said. My father spent 25 years building it. I spent 15 years protecting it quietly while someone else took the credit. I will not watch it be stolen at a dinner where I wasn't even given a chair. I looked at Ethan directly. For a long time, you said Dad would have wanted the whole family here. You were right. He also would have wanted the man who saved this company twice, and who owns half of it by law, to have his name on a place card. Aunt Patricia made a sound that wasn't quite a word. Marcus stared at the tablecloth. Diane had both hands pressed flat on the table, like she needed something solid. Sophia will distribute documents tonight. Gerald, Monday morning. Full legal review. Ethan. I said his name last. You have decisions to make. Make them carefully. I reached across and picked up the champagne glass from the empty setting beside Ethan. My setting. The one that was never placed, and raised it toward the room. To my father, who built something worth protecting. I drank. 3 seconds of silence. Then Howard Briggs, one of my father's oldest partners, raised his glass. Then a second person. Then a third. Ethan did not raise his glass. I didn't stay for dessert. I said goodnight to Diane, who held my hand in both of hers and said nothing, because some things don't need words. I nodded to the board members, who nodded back differently than they would have an hour ago. I told the hostess at the door that none of what happened tonight was her fault. She looked surprised when I said that. I walked to my car. Ethan called 4 times before I reached the exit. I let it ring. He texted at midnight. We should talk. At 2 in the morning. Danny, I think there's been a misunderstanding. At 6 a.m. I need you to know I didn't mean for this to happen the way it did. I read every message. I responded to none of them until Monday morning, when I sent one sentence. My attorney will be in touch. The people who exclude you are always banking on your silence. They build their power in the space your patience creates. They set a table for everyone except you and wait to see if you'll stand outside the door and accept it. What they don't prepare for is the version of you that has been quietly reading every document, filing every paper, retaining an attorney 3 weeks before the dinner because something in your gut recognized the warning even when your heart wanted to believe in your brother. My father didn't just leave me half a company. He left me the habit of paying attention. He taught me that oak trees don't survive because they're the tallest. They survive because their roots go deeper than anyone thinks. That night, 30 minutes was all it took. Not because I was louder. Not because I was angrier. Because I had been ready. If you've ever been the one left standing while the room looked away, this one was for you. Comment below. Have you ever been deliberately excluded by your own family? And if this hit different, subscribe, because these stories are just getting started.